and you're in a city in which voter fraud is professional. It's not just amateur. Some places may be amateurs at voter fraud. Philadelphia is a professional place for voter fraud because you have a decrepit Democrat machine that you have had in power for 60 years, and it's the reason why you have voter fraud. It's the reason why you have so much crime. It's the reason why you're leading the country in some categories of crime, because these people are not helping the people of Philadelphia. Their loyalty is to the Democrat Party. Oh, please, please. I'll answer 3 questions, one at a time. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Wiener? Who is a winner or a cheater? Oh, is he a winner or a cheater? Well, that's what we want to find out. We have a right. I mean, here's what I can say about this evidence. This evidence is overpowering in that it suggests we need a very, very detailed hearing. We have to find out exactly how many ballots are implicated, how many ballots were not inspected. The estimates I have so far, but we haven't finished this investigation, is there was about 150 to 200,000 ballots here and about 300,000 ballots in Pittsburgh. It may be more, it may be less. Now, that's very serious because the margin of victory after being behind by 800,000 was only about 40,000. And it's a little odd that every vote from Tuesday on was all for the one candidate. There's also a very strange thing that happened, which will be part of our case. At some point during the process, when the lead of President Trump reduced from something like 50,000 to 30,000, at the time it was at 50,000, 94% of the vote had been cast. And when we got to 30,000, it was only 90% of the vote cast. Now, I can get experts to tell you how that happens. That happens because, think about it, you increase the denominator. What do you increase the denominator with? New ballots. Nobody was informed of new ballots, unless people were writing them up. This will be a very, very strong case. And I know you won't accept it because of your hateful biases, but let's see if you can try thinking rationally. The poll? Because they don't decide the election. The call for Joe Biden is it? Who was it called by? Oh my goodness, all the networks. Wow. All the networks. We have to forget about the law. Judges don't count. All the networks thought Biden was going to win by 10%. Gee, what happened? Come on, don't be ridiculous. Networks don't get to decide elections. Courts do. Of course, courts set aside elections when they're illegal. In this particular case, I don't know if there's enough evidence to set aside the entire election. Certainly not around the country, maybe in Pennsylvania. However, there certainly is enough evidence to disqualify a certain number of ballots. The ballots that were not properly inspected should be thrown out. And that number of ballots should be taken out of the count. That could affect the election. Shh. Shh. I can't hear two people at once. I'm sorry. That's a whole new issue. That's a whole new issue that we're just developing. Seems to be a significant number of ballots, and there seems to be a significant number of, I shouldn't say significant, there seem to be 3 or 4 very credible witnesses that there was backdating going on, and there are direct witnesses for that, but I'm sure you'll call that not evidence. Not you, the general mob.
Can you just speak to the legal process that you're preparing?
Sure.
You're filing a lawsuit.
Yes.
I imagine in state court.
Yes.
Can you walk us through, that process for for us laymen who.
Sure, simple.
Are you expecting us to go to the Supreme Court? I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you, sir. I can be a law professor. The case that we would file, many cases are going to be filed, some big, some small. This is going to be eventually a big case because it will go beyond Pennsylvania. But right now, the case is a civil rights case. It'll be filed in federal court. I'm sorry. It'll be filed in federal court. You could file it here or Pittsburgh. That'll be the choice of our lawyer who's looking at it now. Since there seem to be more cases in Pittsburgh than here right now, I would guess it would be filed in Pittsburgh, but it would affect both jurisdictions. And what the case alleges is very simply that President Trump's campaign was denied its right to a fair count, which is a deprivation of civil rights. And if that's the case, the court has a wide range of what are called equitable remedies. Equitable remedies could include depriving that jurisdiction of a certain number of votes, equal to the number of votes that are proved to be not inspected properly. It could be to set aside an election, but that could be one of the things we ask for, but I think that if you set aside the votes, you would probably remedy the wrong that was done here. Now, it could turn out as we go beyond Pittsburgh and we go beyond Philadelphia, and we have a little bit of evidence elsewhere in another Democratic part of the state that the same thing was going on, that it might spread to there. Where I do see it spreading, however, is sometime next week, unless I'm wrong, I think there'll be a similar case in Atlanta where similar things were going on. Republican inspectors showed up. They expected to inspect, right, like they do for absentee ballots, and they were uniformly kept out. They got to see nothing. And remember, Atlanta had to do the same thing you had to do. They had to catch Biden up because on election night he had lost. And he was down by a very good margin with only 85% to go. Something very similar happened in Michigan, Wisconsin, can't say Arizona, but in almost every state where President Trump had a lead going into the end of election night, some of the leads looking almost mathematically impossible to undo with the 5%, 10%, 20% of the vote. In almost all of those, this practice was followed. And I'm right now trying to find, did we get to see any ballots that were used for that purpose? If that's the case, then we have a massive nationwide lawsuit. So it could affect more than one state. But right now, the one that it definitely affects is the state of Pennsylvania in a very, very big way. But it's not the only infirmity in this state. There are dead people voting, no question about it. We get any number of complaints of that. We have a very serious problem with backdating of ballots, including 4 witnesses now who are testifying to that. Whether that becomes part of this lawsuit or it's something separate, that isn't developed as fast as this has. One last question.
Republican county officials in charge of elections in Pennsylvania are saying that they don't see any evidence of widespread voter fraud. So if the Republicans in charge of some of these counties who are doing this vote counting are saying there's no evidence of that, why is there a discrepancy between the people actually in charge of that and the Trump?
Well, that's like comparing apples and oranges, isn't it? They're not in charge of Philadelphia. How would... I'm glad they didn't see widespread fraud. That was in Republican counties. I don't think there was fraud in Republican counties.
Right here in Philly, I have spoken to a Republican commissioner who is absolutely clear that he and other Republicans were able to watch the count here and that it was...
Well, then let him come and tell me that. I haven't found one who's willing to tell me that. Let him give me an affidavit under oath, under penalty of perjury. You're telling me these people are lying?
No, not at all. And I was going to say, I'm not disrespecting what they are.
Well, I've spoken to about 50 people.
You say you've interviewed 25 of them.
I have statements from 25. We've spoken to 50. Every single inspector.
That's 50 people in 3 days that the president's lawyer has been able to find.
Oh, no. I didn't speak to them. Are you the lawyer for the other side, by the way? Well, you should get paid for it. The reality is that nobody has come forward, even though I've called the state party, the city party. I've asked, is there anyone that wants to come forward and say that there's anything unusual about the man in charge of this whole process, who watched the whole thing, has already come forward and given us a signed statement that no one got a chance to inspect. Now, unless this man had a secret opportunity to do it, there was one person in charge of all these people. He was there constantly for both days. Not a single Republican got a chance to view a single ballot. Now, if we got to view 10 or 12, well, then we'll reduce our number from 120,000 to 110,000. But you produced this man for me. So far, he hasn't come out of the woodwork. And, well, then, maybe, yeah. Well, if I were the commissioner of this city, I don't think I would admit that I didn't allow people to do this. I mean, there was a last time a Republican played ball with Democrats like that in New Jersey. He went to jail for 10 years.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.